Hey, friends. Thank you for joining us. And I apologize for being 23 minutes late. We've had some serious hacking in the back room, so I'm reliably informed, and it's been ongoing all bloody day. But not surprising, we had an immensely successful launch the other evening, courtesy of many of you. It turns out we had 250,000 people watching. Wow, big numbers. I'll tell you that. Even if we were mainstream syndicated media, that would be huge. For alternative gutter media, we did amazingly. But unsurprisingly, we were taken down almost as soon as broadcast was over, within a few hours for sure. But we're delighted that it got out. The launch was successful in that sense. Today's beautiful shindig with David Sereda, which is really beginning the first activation connected to the extraordinary work that David's been doing, which he went into at great length on the Lazarus Initiative. This is the first get together with David to really kind of do a deep dive and drill into the frequency sets he's developed and is working with, which in the simplest terms is going to be amping up the noosphere of the planet. This stuff, speaking from myself and Humanitad Foundation, I've been involved for about 15 years with multiple scientists, some of them rocket scientists, astrophysicists, particle physicists, quantum physicists, and we've conducted multiple experiments over the years and championed multiple innovations and technologists. What David's doing is very much at the forefront. It's at the vanguard of how we undo the Babylonian dream spell, the Babylonian knot, so to speak, because at the end of the day, those of you who follow my work will know that we're dealing right now with the status quo, which is based on historical Luciferic and satanic principles. When I say satanic, I mean Saturnian, inverse logic. And moving back thousands of years to pre-Sumerian times, we've had this interventionism in the human story. We are cosmogenetic hybrids, yes. Absolutely. We are galactic royalty, humans. That's what we are, the Adamite. But we've also been fucked with left, right, and center in very, very negative ways. And if you go back and understand the context of the Brotherhood of the Snake and the Sons of Belial, the Sons of Orion, the Draco Reptilians, all of the interventionism and interference that we've suffered genetically has been really connected to frequency wars. Frequencies are everything. The isotope frequencies that come off the building blocks and the elements of nature, of reality, it's all connected ultimately to frequency and to resonance. And either you're in a high resonance or you're in a low resonance, in simple binary terms. What David's work is connected absolutely into the atom seed of the Christed light and the frequency sets connected to the Christed nature or the supernature, the actualized state of being. That is the most powerful frequency set in the temporal universe, because we're talking ultimately about empathic waveforms. We're talking about, love, compassion, empathy, affirmation, gratitude, expansiveness, creativity, orgasm, bliss, euphoria, all that good stuff, which is what defines us as sons and daughters of God. That's what's exciting about this, and this is part of what we're doing with the Lazarus Initiative for the next year, is to invite as many of you as who want to join this noble journey in working with us in defining the Alpha, the Omega, and how they fold into the now, because it is the living geometry of now which matters. Nothing else matters. All else is captivated by the thrall of dream spell, of the idea of time, the idea of the past and the future. Any great wisdom keeper or shaman or avatar tells you that it is only when you recognize the fallacious nature of past and future and step into the immanent template of now that you move into the transmutative, transcendent principle of timelessness. And it is the timelessness that we're talking about here. The frequency sets we're playing with David, and he'll go into this a hell of a lot deeper than I'm capable of, we're talking about tapping into timelessness, into zero point, into singularity, unity consciousness. That's the playground. That's the true playground. We're allowed to play in that space, provided we have earned that quanta. We've earned that resonance. So join us on this journey, which I think is going to be fabulous. I'm going to do my best here without a technical director in the witching hour. Actually, it's nearly 1 o'clock in the morning here in Bali, Indonesia. And I'm still bloody tired from the other night, I can tell you. I'm going to play, for those of you who didn't catch it, because we had some technical cock-ups the other day, I'm going to add to the stream here just a short 4-minute Lazarus Initiative launch video, which I created. And I hope that this sets some context for the broader initiative that's taking place over the coming year. And at the end of this little promo, I'll bring David Sereda online and we'll begin to have some fun. Okay, guys, let me try and do this without mucking it up. Great. Well, that seemed to go fairly flawlessly. So let me just explain. I've just read some of your very gracious comments, and thank you. We've got moving up to 3,000 people online already from a standing start. And that's not bad, guys, considering we just sent this link out a few minutes ago. The link we sent out early today on social media went down. So that's the one that we couldn't get active. We had to just recreate a new link. And that's why thousands of people, I'm told, have been waiting in various YouTube queues, and I apologize for that. I'd be really grateful if you could send this out, just share the hell out of these links right now so we can attract as many people as we can across here. I'm going to, without much more ado, bring in my good friend, David Sereda. David, hi. Good to see you.
Hi, Sacha. I had so many goosebumps watching that presentation. I've got goosebumps like rippling through me right now. I love the way you speak, Sacha. I love the way you speak. And I want to first talk today, before we go into the toning practice, that I met Jesus 5 times in person, and in a blinding light and love and ecstasy, thousands of times brighter than our sun. And when he explained to me, this was in 1994, Easter morning 97, and then again in 99, and he's continued to appear periodically in very unique ways since then. So what he said to me is, when Adam and Eve, which is a recalibrated human, they're not the first humans, it's a regenesis. Every so many great periods in history, we get regenesis. And the Sacred Gospel of John, which is the Apocryphon of John, and the Gnostic, tells of these many different lowercase god goddesses who engineered or recalibrated the human being to be a slave, right? But the supreme God plants this luminous epinoia, which in Greek means luminous thought, in every one of us. And the pronoia, which is the supreme being light, which is infinite ecstasy. It's so important to understand that heaven and God it's not this boring place. It's actually you lit up into exactly what Sacha is saying. From the root chakra, it's orgasmic, and it explodes, and it expands and expands and expands. And that bliss, which starts out as a root bliss, becomes more and more and more purified. And it becomes a sustained light that it actually sustains as a supernatural ecstasy bliss. So when we took in the knowledge of good and evil, I'm going to use my tissue paper as an analogy. So we went from singularity, and you'll see in the Gospel of Thomas is very, very wealthy in talking about duality and how we went into from singularity to duality, and then how to go from duality back to singularity. And duality is when we spin into good and evil, which is judgment. So you got to suspend all judgment and go into total acceptance in yourself. It's like this tissue. If this goes into duality and this is oneness, well, you keep twisting it and twisting it and twisting it. What is it doing? It's making you uptight. It's tightening down your spine so tight. And you'll notice this with people who are very judgmental, even being judgmental to yourself. So you don't judge any of your chakras, because Adam and Eve were naked in the garden. They were blissed out. There was no judgment about their nudity. Their bodies were perfect. They were radiating in the supreme bliss state. And then when you get sucked into duality, judgment, okay, there is no good and evil, because what's good to me may be evil to you, right? Religions divide because they think they're right and the other person's wrong. And that's what causes this tightening. So this is your spine in judgment, and it's tightening up. So the toning practice goes way, way back. This is an ancient Egyptian practice that Jesus in the Gospel of the Egyptians is clearly telling his disciples, the apostles, and the masses to practice this. And the question is, at what pitch? And that's what I determined, and I gave a little bit of that in my previous presentation about the origin of the actual pitches of these particular vowel sounds, because you can make the sound A, you can say A. I mean, it depends how high your voice goes, but the question is, what are the pitches? So when you put your headphones on or you use speakers and you play the 7-minute male track or the female 8-minute track, which means the female track goes up 8 octaves and the male goes up 7. The pitch that you hear in your ears is the pitch you want to be at when you hear the tone and practicing the vowels. Pythagoras actually called this the musica humana. So the human is a musical instrument, if you will. We are an instrument, and that's why we like to wiggle and dance when we hear music, right? Because our instrument starts to respond inversely to the instruments that are being played. Now, when the musical instrument is tuned just right and you participate with your voice, I want to tell you, this is really an amazing experience that just happened in our family. My little one, Astaria, who's 5 years old, this was only a week ago, she suddenly started seeing who she called God in heaven. And when your 5-year-old wakes up and tells you, I just saw God in heaven, and she said to God, how do you know all of our names? And God was in this white house with a white table with little red hearts on it, 2 palm trees. It's really cute, right? She goes in, God has blue eyes and brown hair. And God said, I know all of your names because all of your names are God. You are all. So God when God sees all of us, because the supreme God overrided the lowercase prison gods and created this light inside of us, this luminous epinoia. And then the next night, my little Astaria is her name, who was born on September 11th, by the way, 5 years ago. God told her, no, I'm changing my name to David. And I laughed. I said, God's not changing God's name to David. But no, God said, no, all of your names, Sarah, Louise, Sacha, all of our names are God's names because they're a vibration. And your voice, imagine 8 billion people on this planet, and each one of your voices are unique. None of them are exactly the same. How does the Creator do that, right? How does it do that? So again, when you apply your voice to the tones you're going to hear in the exercise, right? Don't worry if your voice is a musically perfect voice. Don't worry about it. It's your voice. It could be a crackly voice. It could be a melodic voice. That doesn't matter. Just go into total acceptance that your voice is your God-given voice. So it's your vibe. It's your sound. And what you're going to notice, and what many people have reported in my toning course, is that 2 weeks later, I remember this guy writing me saying, I came out of the elevator and everybody saw this light around me, like all the staff in the office. You're so much more radiant than you were before. And that's because most of us, as we get, more and more tight or uptight because of duality and self-judgment and judging others, is we tend to operate emotionally in only about 2 octaves. So that means our voice and our emotions are only going like, you might get that high, you might get that low. But when you do these exercises, it's going to build neural pathways within you to expand your ability to shift in your personality within these octaves. And then within these octaves are insights, creative insights start to come. Because when your instrument is tuned properly, and it's not out of tune, like twang, bong, you're not out of tune anymore, watch how you manifest. It's going to change completely. And so this is the missing thing. This is what the Catholic Church did, is when the Gnostic Gospels started emerging, it said, no, we only follow Paul, who was formerly Saul's Christianity, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They eliminated all the women, 7 women, the 72 other minor disciples, and they eliminated most of the apostles. Philip, we lost Philip, where Jesus is kissing Mary Magdalene on the lips, which is clearly his wife. So we lost all of it, and the Roman Catholic Church, which is destroying, and I can't even believe, because it's not even prophesied in the book of Revelation what they'd be doing to our children, millions of our children being devastated by these sick priests who have not been able to reach the true spirit because the true Spirit of God is going to fill you with your own ecstasy, your own I am-ness. Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am. So the true name of God is your own I am. Your own I am is your gateway to God. So when you're doing these tones, just don't put God outside of yourself. Just put God in yourself. And in fact, Sacha, you brought up something really important the other day when you were talking about the jealous God, the angry God, because just before Jesus says, you can Google this, and I'll send you a link to this. Just before Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am, he's arguing with a bunch of Jews who are worshiping the wrong God. And he said, that God is a murderer. He's a liar. He's been a liar and a murderer since the beginning. So the Jews were divided. Half of them, or part of them, were worshiping the supreme, infinite God. And some of them were worshiping this angry, warfaring God, and they couldn't make the distinction. And he's trying to help them. And then they start throwing rocks at him because, they think their angry God is the right God. So the real God is blissed out. It wants you to reach your own heaven. So now let's go to the actual tones themselves. I'm just going to go to share screen here and go to my Word document and then share screen. Hang on a second. I just got to find it because this is where the real practice is. Share screen. See if this works, and then I go to share. Can you see my screen? Which is
I'm not seeing it yet.
Do you see this? Do you see gospel?
Screen. You got to share the screen at the bottom button on the StreamYard itself. Can you see?
Yeah, I saw. I hit the share button, and then it says share your entire screen. Share. Share. Okay, so now do you see Word right now? Gospel of the Egyptians.
There you go. We're on screen.
Okay, you see Gospel of the Egyptians vowel sounds?
Yep.
Okay, good. So the important thing here with these vowels, because the Egyptians have 7 vowels, and I want to say the ancient Gnostics practiced these 7 vowels, and the ancient Greeks practiced these 7 vowels. That's where Pythagoras got the human instrument is the musica humana, which expands into musica mundana, which is the universe. And you'll see that the human, the human, the man, and the woman are the hue, which is the sound that the Ekankar people sing as a toning practice, is the highest sound, right? So in the Gospel of the Egyptians, you have pure I sound, which is I, but again, you can go I. And when you do these sounds, when you do the exercise, just play around with it. Be playful in yourself. Hang loose. It's not important that you're perfect. You don't get the bliss as a reward. You get the bliss when you fully accept that you are it, that you are God. So when you're going to do these sounds in a very playful way, you can even shimmer them. So the E is pure E. The O is pure O, and the U is U. And then there's second E. There's a second E in the Gospel of the Egyptians, but it's it's almost like it has a bit of an A in it. But this is the phonetic. It's really an AH, like a so it almost sounds like an ah. But then your A is pure A, or A, and then the last O you may think is another O, but it's not. It's ah, which is, again, an O is an ah, like as an amen. So you can see how very many sacred mantric or ohmic words are formed in combination of the vowels and the consonants. So this chart should, I mean, Sacha, everyone should get this chart. And when you download the tones, most people will seem to be getting all 4 tracks. So there's a male and female 33-minute version, which you're going to do on the cardinal dates that Sacha determines, I believe, is the 21st of the month at a very specific time, which means we're going to do it together and create a synchronistic event. But as a daily practice, which you can do in the morning and the night, because it's only going to take you 10 minutes to do this, you do the 7-minute male or 8-minute female practice, okay? So what we're going to do now is, do you have the track on your end, Sacha? Or if I play it on my end, it's going to come through my mic, but it won't be great sound. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I don't have it, David. No. Was it sent to me? Email it to me now. I can trigger it from this end. Debbie's just going to try and get it to me right now.
If you trigger it at your end, then the sound will go to everyone better. But then people who don't, if you don't have the frequency sounds, it's only $11.11 to get all 4 tracks, which is, you know, a little more than a cup of tea. So then I will I'll go out of share screen here. So this chart, you know, can be in front of you, but I like to start with A. You can actually use any value you want. What I found is that don't worry if you hit all the vowel sounds within a single session. Just play with it. Get to know your voice. Get to know which vowels are really you, right? Or I, or ah. What are your vowels? Where do you like to be at? And just the first tone is going to be so ultra low. It's going to be so low that you're just going to have a really gentle sound, right? You're going to be really nice and low, way down here, like you can even hum. It's really more about when your voice engages in the tones, it's going to spiral and interweave. And the idea is that chord that got really tight and uptight in our system is going to unwind. And the Tibetans actually call this untying the knots. And the Mother Mirror, actually, when she looks inside of you, I've met the Mother Mirror many times, incredible experience to sit with her. She looks inside of you and she can see your knots and where you're all uptight, and she loosens the knots. And this is what happens is when you start vibrating your strings, you think of string theory, that we're billions and billions of strings. If we're not in the resonant space of awareness that eventually turns into supreme levels of ecstasy, we're just too tight. We're wound up too tight. So do you have them, or should I play them here? Do you have the tone, Sacha? Not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me, Sacha?
I can hear you fine, David. You froze there for a moment, but you've come back. Are you hearing me?
Okay, yeah. So are you going to play the track there, or should I play?
I'm not able to. There's no sound file. Send some Google bullshit, but I don't do Google Drive, Google Box, all of that nonsense. So.
Okay, it's okay. So I'll play them here. You probably won't hear them that well, but you'll just see how I do it with my voice. And then again, when you get these frequencies, it's really good to do. I'll show you a breathing technique just to do, you know, a few breaths before you start toning. You breathe in through the nose. This is called the breath of God technique. Breathe in through the belly, expand the chest, expand. You take sips of air to expand the chest, and then make a little shape with your mouth. Exhale. I do this for 45 minutes a day, every 2 months, every day for 30 days for the last 11 years. Expand the chest, expand the chest. Really focusing on the here and nowism of your own self. So we do a few breaths, and then I'm going to do the male tones, and I'm playing right now. It's really low, this first tone. So you will hear them come in. And when it stops, just go right into the silence, into the silence. All of your atoms are shimmering, shimmering, radiating into the peace. Deep, deep peace. So that's the technique. Could you hear that, Sacha?
Yeah, absolutely loved it. Thank you.
Very, very good. You can feel everything is resonating right now, resonating. And I couldn't make the highest sound. I actually made a bee sound. The yogis call this the Brahmari the bee. You know, Brahmari the bee, where you go, like you make it in the back of your throat, which is really kind of an upper eye sound.
Yeah.
And just play with it, people. Just don't worry if you don't sound like the most beautiful singer in the world. It's your voice. And just feel, in the end, when the sound stops, and if you do this with headphones, it'll go deeper. And you'll see what starts to happen. Just keep doing this. Do the breathing technique. You know, a few minutes before, even 5 minutes is good of the, it's called a yogic breath. Actually, you go into the belly and then roll the chest up, sips of air. It's very gentle on the exhale, and you do that for 5 minutes and you'll get some oxygen in there. And then when you tone, and you sit as long as you want afterwards, right? So you might, and then if you have to go to work or do what you do, and then do it again at night before bed. So that's the technique. Is there any questions? Could you ask David to go through the pronunciation again so that people really get that? So again, it's we have A-E-I-O-U, right, in our vowels, but the Egyptians and the ancient Greeks had 7 vowels, right? Because, and again, let me go to share screen. This is what somebody's asking. And you should have this chart in front of you. And then you go to the, can you see that again, the chart? Can you see the chart, the Gospel of the Egyptians? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, it's up now.
Okay, good. So these are their vowels. Their vowels are to the right. My notes are to the left. So if pure I sounds, it's just I. But again, you can say I at any different interval you want. I, and then E, or E. And again, I mean, some people can go higher with their voice and some people can't. Just pick the vowels, again, that match the pitch you're hearing in your ears. And you can do this in groups through the speakers because everybody can, you know, be in more of a shared space that way. My notes are to the left, pure O sound, which is just O, like you're saying, and the mantra Om is A-U-M, for example, right? A-U, and then M is like a humming, right? And the U is, you literally say the letter U. You can just go U, and U goes quite high, but you can also do U. So I would actually take this chart without the tones you hear and get to know your voice. This is great for children and families, by the way. Kids love this stuff.
Yeah.
The E, the second E is an it's really got an H and an E and an A in it. It's not E. It's because they have a second vowel. It doesn't sound the same as the first E. It's an and then the next vowel is a pure A sound, which is A. So play with yourself, with your voice. And then the last O is actually an ah sound. It's an ah. You see my voice crackles a little bit, you know. Ah. And as you get to know your voice and these ranges, you'll notice I was putting my hand on my sternum bone, my chest bone. Because when you do the tones, and even when you talk, you're going to feel, you're going to make that connection to your own physical vibration. And remember, I showed you in the previous talk that if we look at what our skeleton is made of, when the body is consumed, we're mostly calcium. And calcium under the crystal lattice scale is 6 pyramids in a cube.
Yeah.
Right. And your sodium happens to be the same crystal lattice, which Thomas Brown brought up. Thomas Paine. And so that is, no, it wasn't Thomas Paine. It was somebody else. But anyway, the sodium has the same geometry, and gold also has the same geometry. And we do have a little bit of gold in us. And I'll give another talk about how to get gold in, how to get harmonic gold into your body, because that's one of the things we lost is when all the gold was taken out of all the rivers, we don't get enough gold in our body. So those are the sounds. So, maybe, the chart could, everybody could just see the chart, and then who gets the tones, have the chart in front of you. And then, you do the breathing and you do the toning and sit in the silence, because you'll notice there's a really great opportune moment. 2 more important points. Putting your hand on the chest bone when you're vibrating in meditation isn't about trying to stop the thoughts. Meditation is about shifting from thinking to feeling. And when you go into feeling-based awareness, right, you're feeling, and that's what the toning is about. Shift from don't think the tones, feel the tones. Don't think you are, feel you are, right? So feel the tones. You can even put your hands on your chest when you're doing this. And what I'm saying it does is it brings you into the present moment, because the goddess bliss is only happening right now. So don't worry about whether you're thinking or not when you're meditating. Just feel you're meditating. Feel your breathing. Feel your vibrations. And the more you do this, once you've been doing this over and over and over and over again, just watch what will happen in your life. It's a wonderful blessing. So any more questions about it? I just want to make sure.
No, good. This is great. Thank you. Can you hear me okay now?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Oh, cool. So let me just fire some questions at you, David, that Jennifer prepared for me. Did you have a specific event in your life that stimulated your fascination with frequencies and calculating the frequencies of structures?
Well, what happened to me is, I started meditating. My dad brought me to a guru named Baba Haridas, who had these retreats in Oyama, British Columbia. And Baba Haridas Babaji is quite a legendary guru. He passed recently. And, my mom had divorced her second husband, David Cooper. So I was living with a science teacher for 7 years in California. And my mom sent us back to our real dad, who is this wonderful psychologist. You have to have my dad on your show. He's 81 years old. And he goes into the 9 neurochemicals that, again, are activated by tones and emotions. And DMT, which is not the highest neurochemical, by the way. Right. Your body will, there's higher ones, which he can explain to you. But basically, he took me to this retreat. I didn't know anything about yoga. I was 12 years old. And so I meet this guru, and in the middle of the night, I pitch my tent, and all of a sudden, this wave is going up my legs, and it's paralyzing me, and it goes up my spine. And I'm like, what is this thing? And pretty soon, I couldn't move my arms if I tried. And then I'm lying on my back sleeping, and it started choking me. And I said, just relax. If it's going to kill you, just let it kill you. I didn't know what it was from a kid, right? Boom, I blank out. And all of a sudden, Rama, Sita, and Hanuman, whom I've never seen in my life, I didn't know who the monkey man was, right? Didn't know who he was. Beautiful people, jewels that are radiating from that. They have these crowns of jewels and real jewels in their heads. They're radiating this blinding blue light, and I fall prostrate on the ground in front of them. And there's so much light, so much ecstasy. So the next morning, as a kid, I'm standing in the yoga retreat, and I told Babaji, and one of his disciples, Bodhidharma, takes me over. Babaji said, go take him and show him who Rama, Sita, and Hanuman are. So he showed me the painting, and I said, oh, that's who I saw, although they're millions of times more beautiful in the real deal than they are in the painting. So that was like my first initiation, that this meditation stuff was really real. And then I started doing a lot of meditation. I wanted more, like, give me more. It was all about my practice, and my first girlfriend and I met at this health food store, and we followed this book on raw foodism called Survival in the 21st Century. And I started working with her as a tree planter in British Columbia and going to yoga retreats. Eventually, my dad got into Osho Rajneesh, and I lived with Osho for a year. He has a lot of great, wonderful meditations. These meditations are spectacular. He's got shaking meditations. He's got breathing meditations, dynamic meditation. Osho's, as you're showing his picture, I had so much fun in his ashram. We laughed so much there. I love him so much. And he really, despite what any negative thoughts about Osho, this guy he looked like a floating light cloud when you saw him walking by every day. It's really bringing emotions for me. I don't know why.
Well, that's because it was the real deal. Because it was
the real deal, and he took a lot of hits for it, because he liberated people sexually. He said, but first of all, you got to go back to the God of the Garden of Eden and wonder, how did Christianity get so uptight? How did you get so uptight? Because they stripped Jesus of his wife.
Yeah.
Those wonderful kisses in the Gospel of Philip. And then in Philip, he says, by kissing, the perfect one conceived life in the womb. So when he's kissing her, he's giving her a child, right? Because you can't imagine how blissed out Osho was. And so I lived with him for a year. I did all those meditations. And the shaking meditations are really good because they loosen up the knot, right? And then there's dancing meditations. Osho I remember he said this. He said, I'm called the sex guru because I wrote a couple of books on sex and hundreds on meditation. And yet we see the perversion in the Catholic Church. We see the priests raping our children and our teenagers, and we're saying, we're supposed to follow you? You know how to get to God? No way. Like, in my opinion, the whole thing needs to come down. And the way to transform a mistake, because it's a mistaken religion, there's no way all the prophets in the Bible had wives and children, all of them, right? I'm having children very late in my life because I'm 60 this summer, and I've got a 5-year-old, and my little 5-year-old, really blisses me out. When I'm meditating, she sits on my knee, and she feels it. She feels the energy. So that's how I started. But then in Topanga, California, in 1994, I ran out of money. I pitched my little tree planting tent in my dad's yard, which was 3 acres with horses. I was right next to the horses, and the tax man wiped out my bank account for some reason. After 6 months of tree planting, I had 35 grand in there, which normally gets me through the winter. And they took it all away. So I had nowhere to live. I pitched my tent, and a rainstorm came in October of 1994 and flooded my tent. I was floating in water, literally getting hypothermia. And I left my body, and above the oak trees was this granite crucifix, really dark granite, and it was humming, toning. It was, and underneath the crucifix was a baptismal water font, so shaped like a cross. So I fell into it in spirit, and I was immediately taken up above the rain clouds, and the sun hadn't yet risen yet. And I'm like, I'm dead. I must have died. I froze to death. And all of a sudden, these tiny little lights, as big as atoms, billions of them came from above, behind, and whoop, they came together and formed the body of Christ, shining like millions of suns. I fell at his feet, blinding love. And you look at him, oh my God, he's so holy. He's so holy. There's so much love. There's so much, oh my God, he's not who they said they were. I come up to his feet, which were bare and in sandals, and I look at him. And you have to understand, the transfigurations in the Gnostic Gospels were so powerful that when Jesus would shine like this, and this is before the resurrection period, the disciples couldn't look. They were falling on their face, hiding. And the ecstasy is so torrential, you're saying, stop, stop. When the disciples are saying, we can't bear this. It was just like that. And when I held his feet, the first thing he said, the first words were, I have appeared to a number of people throughout history, but at different levels of their spiritual ability, different vibrational levels. He said, no one has ever seen me in my entirety. And he said, even now, what you're seeing is not my entirety. You couldn't bear it. So this is confirmed in the Gospel of Philip, where Jesus said, Jesus appeared to them all. He appeared to the great as great and the small as small, even though his true power and his true word hid itself from everyone. He appeared to angels. He appeared to everyone. So no one sees. And then Magdalene would be the same, right? So just about 4 years ago, I met Magdalene in person, which happened to be the same day that they celebrate in France, or her arrival to what formerly was Gaul, actually, a Roman territory. It wasn't France. And eventually becomes France. And Magdalene brings the children and brings everything into what we now call France. And here's something really interesting. I just intuited this. In French, I am, which again, Jesus is the I am. Moses, the true God of Moses, is not the jealous God. It is the true I am. The tetragrammaton just means I am. In fact, this is the work of Peter Le Mesurier in the Great Pyramid Decoded. The Egyptians had a tetragrammaton for I am as well, which was Hafwa, Yifwa, which and Hafwa is I am, right? So in French, je suis is I am. Drop the I in Jesus. You see? So the point is, there was no France and there was no French language. It's very possible that when Magdalene brought these sacred teachings into that region, this is the book. Because
I know, amazing. I got it 20 years ago as well, and it was life-changing when it came out.
First life-changing book. So I took his measurements, and instead of doing the acoustical chamber resonant frequencies that Peter Le Mesurier, Paul Horn, when he was playing his flute in the great king's chamber and the queen's chamber, the resonant frequencies of the chamber is not what I did. I took the entire pyramid as a slope crystal oscillator, and I took the speed of light divided by all the wavelengths. And I'll go really deep into this in here. Let me just show you a graphic really quick, people, because this is mind-blowing if I can find this. Because very recently, some Russian and German scientists did a study where they beamed frequencies, because this just gets deeper and deeper and deeper, into the Great Pyramid, and then they photographed its energy field, and lo and behold, the divine person shape emerges. It forms a Maltese cross. Okay, I got to find these images and make sure I have them ready for your screen. I just got to see if there it is. Perfect, right there. Okay, so open that up, and then I go to this. This is the image from the study. Okay, share screen. And these particular frequencies I'm going to show you now are this imprint. Can you see this Pyramid 1 graphic, PYR graphic?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Great Pyramid of Egypt, and look at the lower row. Okay, they tell you their wavelengths in meters, and all you do is take the speed of light in meters divided by the wavelength, and all those frequencies are revealed to you, right? So you look at the bottom image at 333 meters, and then the second image, you see the Maltese cross forming, and the warm orange spot is right around Queen King's Chamber level. And then when you come to 230 meters, let me see if I can make this bigger. It's a little small. There you go. So again, left 333 meters, you're sort of seeing a Maltese cross. The nucleus of the pyramid is activated because that's where the orange is where all the energy is coming out. The colder areas is less energy. And basically this sweeps from just below 1.111 megahertz, and to the far right at 200 meters, you're a hair's breadth away from 1.51 megahertz. Just very close to that. So as you see this forming, when you get to the far right, it looks like a divine person with their arms stretched out, right? Look at it. You see, so what it's saying is these frequencies cause the pyramid. Remember, our bodies contain pyramids. Our bodies, the calcium, the sodium, and the gold in your body is 6 pyramids within a cube. And if you read the Gospel of Philip, it's all about the bridal chamber, which is the Holy of Holies, which is a cube. I've calculated all of those frequencies and worked with them. So what this shows you is this is what I did, because I always give a long-winded answer. Let me go stop sharing. I'm going to go into this much deeper in my deeper presentation. So what I did is, years had passed since Christ had appeared to me, and we moved to a small town called Nelson, British Columbia, from Sedona, Arizona, where my first daughter was born. And all of a sudden, I had this dream. I get a letter from God. It's signed God. It's really funny. And it's a mathematical formula. And it took me years to decode it. And when I finally decoded the letter, I proved mathematically, with my wife's help, by the way, Crystal, that the Great Pyramid was not an Egyptian monument. It was there millennia before the Indus Valley type people came in and discovered the area and built their religions around it. Because at the time of Christ, the pyramid had its white limestone blocks on the outside. There was no way to get inside. There's no way to get inside. And I need to show you another graphic here, because this is really important. Hang on just a second, because what happens is God tells me how to do the math to find the exact royal cubit, which even Peter Namizaria came awfully close. And again, I took physics. I'm a mathematician. I'm probably the first one to absolutely resolve the royal cubit. But it's so tiny, the shift and the difference in the final number. And when you have the final number of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, the final royal cubit, Noah's Ark is 515.1 feet, 515125 feet, right? That's pyramid angle number. Pyramid is 51 degrees, 51 minutes slope angle, right? The Ark of the Covenant is 51.5125 inches. And the staff of Aaron and Moses, which lay in the ark, is the same because it lay in the ark. So you're going to see the pyramid numbers in everything. Again, there are 2 gods in the Old Testament. The problem with the Bible is it puts them both together, and they're not the same. Jesus makes this distinction really, really clearly, that they're worshiping an evil God. So I totally agree with you. And I think today, most of the church is distorted in that they're following the wrong God. They're actually following the God that believes in judgment, making the distinction between good and evil, which is a mind trap, because nobody can agree on anything being right and wrong. That's what makes us neurotic. When you don't believe in good and evil, when it doesn't exist, you're peaceful. You're incapable of violence. You're incapable of judging another person and killing them and making war against somebody else. And as soon as you find the way back to that, you find it. So let me just find this graphic here, because I wasn't expecting to show this today, but this is very profound what I'm going to show you. Just got to see which folder I put it in. Pyramid. It's got to be in my desktop. Anyway, what I'm about to show you now is that Jesus, which is really Isa. There is no J in Jesus, by the way. That's a Latin. It's Isa Messiah. And Messiah means anointed one, which in Greek is Christ. Right. So again, Jesus never preached in Greece. The Greeks translated Messiah, which became Messiah, in the Greek. Pyramid. It's what would I call it? I might have lost this graph. So what happens? I can show you this in the scriptures. What I'll do is when I'll find this graphic when I give my long presentation. But what Jesus does, and you'll show this in the Gospels, there's a moment where he calls Peter, Petra in Greek means the stone, the rock, which means the foundation, right? That particular moment in the Gospels is, if you read the numbers, it's 1618, where I can't remember which apostle, Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John 16:18. Jesus says, upon this rock, Peter, I will build my church. But it's 1618. That's the golden ratio. And the gates of hell shall not prevail against it, which means the gates of hell will not prevail against the golden ratio. So it's right there. It's coded in the Bible as a Bible code in 1618, which everybody missed. And then there's another place in the scriptures where Jesus calls himself the return of the missing capstone, the missing cornerstone, which is the missing cap on the Great Pyramid of Egypt.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Beautiful. Beautiful. There's a great view of the capstone, which is actually missing, believe it or not, at the top there.
And that's what Jesus is saying he is. Peter of Missouri, I believe he's the great. You know how Peter of Missouri gives us the time clock, Sacha?
Yeah.
And he's saying that the Messiah, I think it's 2025 plus or minus 3 years, everything collapses to the ground.
2025.
2025 plus or minus 3 years could be as early as 22. It says the earth as we know it will cease to exist.
Well, we know that there's tremendous solar activity in 2024 upcoming, a mass corona ejection. I think that's what it is in 2024, and that's going to be a bump in the road. But the 2046 is the micronova. That's the big event astronomically.
Wow. That ties into the Missouri saying,
that's when we're supposed to move into the vertical ascension connected to, provided there's a Tesla shield around the planet at that time. And my conjecture is that the Tesla shield around the planet by 2046 will be actualized or activated through morphogenetic upgrade by enough actualized human beings and within the Christed flame, creating that Tesla shield, activating the noosphere, and then we move into the paradigmatic shift, ascension shift at that time into the vertical. I'm absolutely certain in my own mind that that's what's coming. But in any event, let's carry on. Interesting conversation.
But Le Missouri's time clock says that after the collapse in 2025, which is confirmed by Gene Dixon, and there's one other psychic who gives us the timeline for the return of Messiah, then the anointed one, which will be a new incarnation and a new one. But he says 2038, Sacha. So there's two events. The Messiah comes back 2038, 2036, which is in your timeline with what you're just presenting around 2040 something, right? So if there's supposed to be a sign in the sky, I have to look in Le Missouri's book. I don't see it in here. It's probably in the house. But if you look at his time clock, it's right in line with what you're saying. Absolutely.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Did you ever study the work of my late, much beloved friend, Jean-Michel? The view over Atlantis, because he was really one of the first seers to reveal much of these kind of encodements. I just wondered if you had any connection.
All over the place as soon as his image is in front of me. So thank you. I'll look into that. I did study Krishnamurti incidentally and got to meet him, but just before he died, this is a funny story because he's so old at this point in Ojai, California, and I really feel him right now. I feel him in my heart. I studied him in all of his lectures, and finally I get to meet the real Krishnamurti, and he's sitting in his chair. He's so frail, and he said, "I hope none of you came here to get bliss, because I'm not just going to give it to you. You see, he wants you to find out how to get it. He's not going to transmit the shock to you. If you came here to get bliss and you don't want to learn how this really works, then go away."
Very good. Very good. Very good. Let me run a couple more questions at you if I can. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Whose work inspired you? Well, you've mentioned Le Mesurier, and I'm glad you did, because tremendous inspiration to me as well back in the day. Why were the lightning strikes on the Washington Monument so significant? We touched on this the other day, but again, just bring us back to the Washington Monument. What was so remarkable on that day?
Here, let me just again show a graphic, because when you understand that the Washington Monument is the mother frequency that gives birth to the Great Pyramid, when you really understand that, then, and here's the graphic right here. Let me just pull this up. Share screen. And you really understand, once you do all the math on the Great Pyramid, you'll see every structure that God told the prophets to build, the real God. There is some indications in the Bible where the fake God exists. Okay, so you will see that the pyramid is actually the supreme being. You see the graphic? What is the monument's secret? Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so to understand the significance of the monument, and this again, when I'm sitting in meditation, I actually hear Isa Messiah, which is Jesus Christ's voice. I know his voice. It's so silent, so pure. And he tells me to go do this math. And so it's funny when you get mathematical dialogues with God, you think you're just going to get the love and the bliss. But he wants me to understand this and share it. So if you take the height of the Washington Monument, and how it came to that exact height is a whole story, because George Washington received these visions of angels on the battlefield when America, the first true free country, is trying to be formed in the midst of a British rulership, and the British are trying to claim America as theirs. And no, we want to be a free country. We don't want to be slaves, right? We don't want to be a slave country. But the slavery is so built in our DNA. We can't help but create slavery, because that's built in. So if you look again at the left image of the monument from above, you'll see two circles on the grass that form the Vesica Piscis, which means whoever did the lawn knows the secret that I'm telling you. This is a Masonic secret. That the height of that Vesica Piscis, which again is the shape of the human eye, it's the shape of the woman's yoni, which is the place of where a child is born. And I got to see my own children born. And when they crown, it looks just like that. So if you take the precise height of the monument at 555.427 feet, the ratio of the Vesica Piscis that forms in the middle, the circle in the middle, that you see the lens shape of the Vesica Piscis, is 0.86611062335,382, that of its height. And this is really precise. It's very hard to get that number. It actually equals the height of the Great Pyramid of Egypt when it was finished, which is a smidgen under 481 feet. It comes to 480.69 feet according to Le Mesurier. So the math is 99.935% accurate, which is really phenomenal. That the monument. Now, the next theory, because the monument has a steel core and it's lined with marble, it is therefore a monopole transmitter. And a monopole transmitter, I don't know if you remember driving around in the country, you'd see these huge radio stations.
Oh, yeah.
The height of the radio station tower times 4 is the wavelength of the frequency of that radio station, right? So all you do is take the 555 feet and 5.125 inches, and there's the 5125, right? Everything is 51.5125. Everything. The height of Solomon's Temple is 51.5125 feet. Noah's Ark comes to 515.125 feet. Everything in the Bible has the 5151, which is the Great Pyramid's code, right? It's its code. So when I calculate my frequency for the height of the monument, which when it gets struck by lightning, it transmits holographically in all directions at the speed of light. The frequency it gives off is 442,709.351 hertz. Now, all frequencies have octaves. They all have octaves. So I decide to build, and knowing this is God's frequency, this is the universal creator frequency. The monument is trying to transmit the consciousness of freedom into the new country, into the new world, right? And which is an Egyptian obelisk, by the way. This is an Egyptian obelisk. And when I divide it by a musical octave, which is divided by 2, I come down 5 times and I see 432.333 hertz. And I just, oh my God, that's iconoclastic. That means that the Washington Monument and the scale of God and the goddess is the 432 scale, right? And so what the tones that you're doing in the toning exercise are the octaves of the monument. But the monument, I don't want you to see the monument as something that is an accident. The founding fathers were so passionate to create the world's first free country where we didn't have to be slaves to a system, that you could pursue liberty and wealth for yourself, and that you didn't have to, be this bowing down slave and be poor and your teeth are falling out. So it's really profound what happens with Washington's visions of the angels. And then he gives the vision to Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, which to me is the most enlightened political document ever created. And Canada really follows in pursuit of this. And they kick out the British. Of course, that's the Great Revolution. And that old way of thinking where you're gonna tax the people. Remember, you cannot tax people for their recompensation for their labor. You can only tax them for profits. That's the original. And the Bible says the same thing. You can't charge usury for loaning money to the people. Okay, this is God's universal law, so that you feel secure, you feel not stressed out, you feel you're going to be taken care of. Of course, all of that was destroyed, all of it. So the monument, I also documented last time we were on the show, the moment it is erected, all of a sudden, all the greatest inventions of the world are born that transform, and the rest of the world follows in pursuit of this. I'll just show this document one more time, because it's really profound that this actually occurs. These inventions did not happen in England, they didn't happen in Australia, they didn't happen in New Zealand, they didn't happen in France. Suddenly, Edison invents the light bulb as it's coming to completion in 1879, the phonographic record 1877. The monument was built between 1848 and 1884, so it's almost complete before 1884. Tesla and Edison invent direct current, alternating current, which changed the world in 1882. And these inventions are all happening right there in the Atlantic seaboard, within a certain sacred radius of the monument in all directions. Bell invents the telephone, and a lot of these scientists came from Europe, but their revelations occurred in that location, right? The telephone, then you look at motion picture, 1888. Henry Ford invents the first automobile, 1886. Lodge invents EMF, which is the tuning circuit for radio. Tesla invents radio at the Chicago World's Fair, 1893, which is right after the completion of the monument. You're talking within less than a decade, right? Remote control, 1898. Vladimir Zworykin TV, 1977. Farnsworth TV, 1922. Both of those scientists invented television. The Wright brothers' first flight in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, in 1903. Carl Jansky invents radio astronomy, 1930. So from that point forward, and not before that, the computer, the cell phone, everything happens within a certain radius of that monument. And so that frequency it's giving off is what's causing the awakening within. And that's why the frequencies you're doing are the octaves of that. Now, to transmit the frequency based on its exact height, we actually use a technology to do that. And again, it even goes higher. The octaves just continue up, infinitely up, infinitely up. And so therefore we will plan that, when its time is due. So this is the last point. And this was proven by Fritz Albert Popp, the German biophysicist, that your living photons that radiate off of your organism travel faster than light speed. So that when you're toning and you're vibrating in these perfect pitches, these pitches are mathematically perfect in correspondence to the monument, which is in correspondence to the Great Pyramid, which is in correspondence to the universal creator. Your physiology will radiate out into the cosmos in tune, because you are a transmitter. You're a universal goddess transmitter. And so when you're doing these frequencies, when we do the alignment date, Sacha, the 21st of the month, the idea is to set a group intention, and that we're going to send out this intention that we want to be free human beings, not just in the spiritual, but in the physical dimension as well.
Indeed. No, very beautiful. And that's correct. And this is all why it's so integral to the Lazarus Initiative, this owning of the state of grace, which is the dispensation of God to all humans, to the sons and daughters of God, which is an infinite invitation for us to resurrect ourselves from the dream spell and to engage that Christed nature and become the superluminal beings that we were ever intended. But engaging supernature and to move into phase coherence with that supernature is our own act of will. And so I want to speak to this momentarily, because the monotheistic religious indoctrination cult programming is all about thy will be done, and about abnegating and surrendering and turning into idolaters and idolizing the effigy of Jesus, the effigy of Magdalene, the effigy of all of those religious icons. That is Luciferic, in as much as it's false light worship, it's adulation, it's idolatry. It is the foundational sin in the spiritual discipline. And it comes, civilizationally, we tend to move into that mutancy. We are invited now to really put away childish things and recognize that the thy will be done is absolute alpha omega logic, but only when it's in convention with my will be done, when my will is in coherence with thy will, and that phase conjugation occurs. That's the Christed nature, that's supernature, that's the messianic principle. And that doesn't diminish Jesus the Master. It doesn't diminish Yeshua, Isa bin Maryam. It's just to say that we need to step into that being ourselves and not constantly be these creatures that are diminished in our own divinity and subjected to the Babylonian priests and the issue of Babylonian priests, which is to always need to grovel and acquiesce and obey the third party intervention. Right now, the Catholic Church has become the coronavirus. This is the Catholic Church right now. You're looking at Catholicism, the bludgeoning, the murder, the pandemonium, the desecration of the blessed Cathars is what's led to this. The Jesuitical interventionism of the bedchambers of the kings and queens and emperors of old. The good dynastic lines were infiltrated by these Jesuitical elements and subverted. The CIA and MI5, MI6, Mossad, the insidious sociopathic criminal element that we now generically call the deep state. Where the fuck did that come from? Well, that's the issue of the Jesuitical element, which personifies the third-party intervention in our lives as Christed beings. We must not make that mistake again. For me, my interest in all of this is that this is the opportunity for us to own through that sacred Aum, which I'm so grateful to you in your beautiful purity, David, for just anchoring that principle, that living principle of the Aum, because it's everything. It's connected to our archaeo-cosmological roots. It's connected to this incredible cacophony of cultural and religious disposition in so many hundreds, if not thousands, of cultural persuasions over millennia. Even this grisly business of the Molochites and the Baphomet worshippers, is the dark texture against which we now define our Christed nature. And I think that, if your craft, your art, your science, your discipline, which I also love the fact that it's connected to this blessed creature, Osho, who history will reflect one day that he was one of the great avatars.
Oh, yeah, Osho spoke about Yeshua, Isa, Jesus all the time.
Well, he came to kill the sacred cow. And we must all kill the sacred cows now. And I'm saying this with passion because my concern is that too many Christians are idolaters, masquerading as Christians. They don't even know it. Exactly. But we've got to start to engage the mechanics of ascension ourselves and not be looking out there for Yeshua to descend from the clouds, because he's not doing that. It's not going to happen that way. It's going to happen as an inward movement, and the reconvention with Yeshua is going to be an internal, collective, axiomatic shift that will define the new paradigm. But I'm concerned right now about the last vestiges of the parasitic, idolatrous Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists out there who are still pegged into idolatry. And I'm hoping that your frequencies and what you're teaching the world to do right now is going to help to bring a great many of our brothers and sisters back into that reconvention. I'll leave it at that.
I love your passion, Sacha. I'm on 100% on the same page. I want to share an experience with you, which is quite shocking. And some of you may judge me for this, but that's too bad for you. But basically, I had this dream. This is right before the church in France caught on fire and was burning to the ground. And in this dream, I heard God speak that the church must be burned to the ground.
Bravo.
And I saw it burning and coming down. And 3 days later, I'm trying to remember the church in France. Remember when it caught on fire in Europe and it just burned? The whole roof caught on fire and burned. And I knew that was really, because I heard the voice of God in the dream say that the church needs to be burned to the ground. We're so attached to iconography in the building, but we don't understand we're holding that architecture in place that claims to represent God for us.
Bravo.
Yet we know those priests are molesting our children and our teenagers.
Yes, we do.
We know they're sacrificing and child trafficking them. I'm a father of 2 girls. I can tell you that when I had the vision of the church burning, and it happened 3 days later, and my good friend Stephen Sipes is my witness because we spoke about this. Stephen Sipes built this huge pyramid in Kelowna, British Columbia, this really beautiful pyramid, and they age wine in there, and the wine becomes holy and activated wine. You definitely have to meet Stephen Sipes. Wonderful human being. One of my very good friends, originally from Manhattan in New York, was a real estate developer there, and he decided to move to Canada and build his vision here. But anyway, I'm so with you on this. It's not that the physical building needs to come down, it's the iconography. So when the image of God, the real image of God, that God created man and woman in God's image, is imageless. Because God has no images, because God's beyond icons. It's beyond everything. It's infinite, infinite light. And from infinite light, it built pyramids and cubes, which form gold, calcium, and sodium, which is the greatest part of our bodies when a fire consumes our bodies. So when those piezoelectric crystals and you start vibrating at the correct pitch, which is why your voice has to be the correct pitch, you start ohmic radiating. You're radiating. And the more you do this practice and you feel that the true image of God is your supernatural ecstasy, which does start with the fire at the root chakra, the desire to make love.
Yes.
The God of the old, go forward, Adam and Eve, you're naked. Go enjoy paradise with your perfect bodies. And make love, not war. And
Why do you think Why do you think the Catholic Church spent, millennia trying to subjugate the human orgasm? Why do you think these disgusting Sabbatean aspects of the crypto-Jewish faith mongers are, biting off the foreskins of little boys,
So,
with their teeth, for the love of Christ? Why are they these inverted Muslim heretics masquerading as imams, snipping off the clitorises of blessed little brown skin and black skin girls across North Africa and the Middle East, for the love of Christ? Well, all of that stuff is going on under color of faith. Tell us a little bit about the relevancy of the Temple of Solomon. I'm interested to ask this question, David, in relationship to the idea that the satanic and sociopathic Rothschild enterprise has been the progenitor of the modern state of Israel and is now wanting to rebuild the Temple of Solomon and presumably return the devil or Lucifer to the throne for 1,000 years. But tell us about the beauty of the sanctity of the Temple of Solomon in its genesis.
So you're not going to believe this, but the measurements are the same as the king and queen's chamber. So of what you're looking at right now, Solomon's temple, right? The original. Okay, so before Solomon's temple was the tabernacle, and the tabernacle is when the original tribe of Moses, the original Jews, were traveling with him. The Ark of the Covenant was kept in 10 by 10 by 10 royal cubits. The book of Ezekiel confirms God uses a cubit plus a hand, which is a royal cubit. Of course, and so today they're going to use the wrong cubit if they rebuild it. They don't know the math the way I know the math. So they're going to get the wrong frequency. So what happens is 10 by 10 by 10 royal cubits is the Queen's Chamber, which is the original Holy of Holies. Now Solomon doubles it, which is an octave, by the way, which is an octave. A musical octave is times 2. Now, the rectangular space that comes into is 10 by 20 royal cubits. There you go. That's the tabernacle. So what you're seeing there is the wall, but the rectangular tent in the back is 10 by 20 royal cubits, which is the king's chamber. And exactly, the king's chamber is 10 by 20 royal cubits. Now, the queen's chamber, which is the Holy of Holies, in the back of the tabernacle, which is the cube, is 10 by 10 by 10. Right? That's a frequency, by the way, and I've calculated that frequency. So that means the king's chamber is the preparatory, and the queen's chamber is the Holy of Holies. We got it backwards, in the way we rever the king's chamber, because it has the sarcophagus, and the sarcophagus might have been the place where the Ark of the Covenant was transferred from that location, sitting on top of what people believe is the sarcophagus, into the Queen's Chamber for activation. So the measurements are identical. They're 10 by 10. So that means the pyramid is God's. And when at the time of Solomon, God tells him to increase it by an octave, which is times 2. So it becomes 20 by 20 by 20 royal cubits, the Holy of Holies, and then 20 by 40, the holy place. Now watch what happens. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, God tells Moses to make a new Holy of Holies whose inner sanctum is 280 cubits. Guess what 280 cubits times 20.605 inches per royal cubit? That's Lemazurius math. The exact height of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Exactly.
Right.
So God is telling Moses to make a Holy of Holies in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is called the Temple Scroll. You have to go to the Temple Scroll, and you'll see the measurements. There's 3 measurements, because there's 2 outer courts. The innermost, which is the holy place, is that. It's 280 cubits. That's the Great Pyramid measurement. So that tells you that there's a reason both Jesus, Isa, Yeshua was raised in Egypt, Moses was raised in Egypt, because there was something there in the story we're not understanding. And it gets deeper and deeper and deeper when you have the advantage of doing the math. And this math was given to me in this letter by God about 6 years ago. I got the letter and I finally decoded what it meant. So you have unification. You have unification. And the most, when you speak, Sacha, you're so passionate. You're so lit up on fire. And I love it because we're the ones holding those buildings in place. We hold the Catholic Church in its position of power. We're afraid that if we bring it down, oh my God, that's satanic. What do you mean? They're killing your children. They're raping your children. They're trafficking your children. You've got to stop giving them your power. Jesus said you are as gods. So do the practices that the Catholic Church destroyed that were in the Gnostic Gospels. The Gospel of the Egyptians, toning practice, was the main practice to activate your light body. And in the Gospel of Philip, the ritual of the male and female union is in Jesus said there's three holies. There's the holy of the holy, and the holy of the holies. And the holy of the holies is the cube. Again, we have cubes within us with 6 pyramids in them. And that is where he called the bridal chamber, where he and Mary Magdalene went in union back into their own Garden of Eden, and were honestly probably completely nude in that space, and shared sacred union, and created their child within that space, created their children, like all prophets did. Every prophet, most of them had children, not all of them, but most of them had their children, and made love, not war, and gave birth to sacred, super blissed out, happy lineage teachers. The all male concept that there's really an amazing history when you study the Roman record, because in the Roman record, the Romans wanted God to be all males, an all male Senate, by the way, in the Roman Senate.
Oh yeah,
and which is really disgusting and very imbalanced. So what they did is they were trying to destroy Christianity, destroy the teachings, which is why the Gnostics hid their scrolls in clay jars and buried them beneath the earth. And they couldn't stop this. But if you read this scripture called the Acts of Paul and Thecla, this astoundingly utterly most beautiful woman that every man wanted to marry, she follows Paul and the Romans and tried to kill her and put her in the amphitheaters and put an example of her not to be a Christian. And her parents begged her, Thecla, not to be a Christian. The Acts of Paul and Thecla was removed from the book of Acts. Nothing could kill Thecla. The lions would lie down and lick her feet. They tried electrocuting her with electric eels. Nothing could kill Thecla. This woman became invincible, this Christian, divine feminine person. And then Vivia Perpetua, this woman is stripped naked, and her breasts are dripping with milk. You have to read the story of Vivia Perpetua. She goes in to be tortured and fed to the lions. They lie down peacefully next to her. Every method to kill her could not kill her. This was Vivia Perpetua. So she takes the Roman centurion's sword and slices her own throat because she knows they're never going to stop. But this divine spiritual power made the women indestructible. There were many Christian iconic women who could not be killed. And what happened when the people and the witnesses in the amphitheaters saw this? They all wanted to be Christian. So the Romans were stuck with this divine feminine masculine religion that's going to conquer the all-male hierarchy. So the Christians then set under Nero, they burned Rome to the ground. They burned it to the ground. And so the Romans said, we're going to take control of this religion. We're going to get rid of the women in Christianity. We're going to turn Mary Magdalene, who's an extremely wealthy family that owned all the fishing boats in the Sea of Galilee and funded the Jesus movement, which most scholars know today happened. And they went after her. The Romans went after her. And there's a Roman record I read where they turned the Sea of Galilee to blood. They killed every person in Galilee looking for her and the children of her and Christ, who then fled on a boat and landed in what is now Marseille, France, which was at the time Gaul, a Gaul Roman territory, and they bring the true Christianity to what eventually became France. right? So that those records of her teachings, again, the Catholic Church went after, and wherever they found the image, the iconography of Mary Magdalene, they just switched it to the Virgin Mary. They said now the black Madonnas, the dark-skinned Madonnas, they just switched them to the Virgin Mary, right? So it is possible the Virgin Mary was Ethiopian, just like Solomon's love for the Queen of Sheba, if you know the Keber Nagast, the Ethiopian Book of Kings, and that's closer to the truth than anything we know, So that's where the children would have been raised, and the new religion. The Germanic races came down from the north. They invented carbon-based steel. They were able to conquer the Romans' pure iron swords and slice them to bits. And then the Roman Empire diminishes, and then they form the councils at night. 2 councils at Nicaea, 1 in North Africa.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, Council of Nicaea was really it. Yeah, so this is an image here depicting it. And this was really the weaponization of Christianity, the subversion of the true message of Yeshua, and the institutionalizing of it into a political, intellectual weaponization, essentially, which then led on to doomsday and the business of registering all living souls through the church bands and the church registers. They started the process of tabulating land, creating enclosures around land, tabulating it, and then turning human beings into fictions by registrations. So the registering of land and people then was the dislocation of the true relationship between people and the sacred soil. And from that point on, we became subjects of Caesar. And we were paying tithes to the church, which was coined to Caesar, same thing, which today has led to us being fleeced systemically, fucked by governments left, right, and center, and penalized for breathing, for walking across the street. And now it's got to the point where we're being forced by the thing called government to mug ourselves, assault ourselves and our immune systems, assault our kids, assault our infirm and elderly, and actually cull ourselves. So that's how insidious and diabolical and serpentine the Council of Nicaea and the way it snaked its way through history to the present day through the Catholic Church. Don't forget, Catholic is connected to the Cathars, the murder of the Cathars. It was the sacrifice of the Cathars, their blood and bones, which was the pyre upon which the fetid whore of Babylon emerged, which I call the Catholic Church. And the black papacy today is the progenitor of the CIA, the deep state, the satanic agrochemical industries, pharmaceutical industries, mainstream media, Sabbatean Zionist element within Hollywood and the entertainment complex. It's all connected, and it all comes back through the global bankster, global parent corporation, back through the crown of England, and therefrom, and the imperial crowns of Europe, back to the Vatican. All roads lead to Rome. And then behind the Vatican is the black papacy. And that's really what we're dealing with now. And until that creature is fully exposed into the Christed light, I'm afraid we will continue to be subjected to the satanic thrall of a engineered dream spell.
I'm 100%. We are, the hard part to understand is I thought when the Gnostic Gospels came out, the whole world was going to change. But they're so brainwashed, the Catholics. There's over 1 billion Catholics. They just take their orders from headquarters. They can be raping their children, and they'll still hand their children in because they're so brainwashed. The Catholic Church is Rome. It's the Roman Empire. They usurped Christianity. The final council was at Trento, Italy. Yeah. And the first church was born at Constantinople by the Emperor Constantine. But then the males decided. In fact, if you look at your Gnostics and you look at even the Gospel of Philip, right? If he had 12 males and 7 women and 72 other holistic disciples, which the current scriptures tell us, then why didn't you let everybody else testify? Why did you get rid of Philip? Why did you get rid of Thomas, right? Because when you read Philip and you see Jesus kissing Mary Magdalene on the lips, and then you find this new scripture that emerged that shows where Jesus refers to her as his wife, they're so brainwashed to thinking she was a prostitute, which she never was. But they're so brainwashed, they're like, well, what if we get it wrong? We'll go to hell. So they put that fear in you. And this is where you have to use your own intelligence to see, what is heaven to you? Is heaven a place where you obey these rules, or is it a place where you're raised up into this high promise at the very end of the Bible, of Revelation? Every tear will be wiped from every eye. Well, what I experience when I go into this divine supreme bliss that Christ taught me how to do is every tear is wiped from my eye. Every bad memory I've had in my life is all gone. It's all gone. You just let it go. It doesn't matter what's happened to you. However traumatic it's been, the bliss exterminates the perception of
Always. And why do you think also the circumvention of the human orgasm and the effort, the attempt again by the parent corporation, which is mainstream media, academia, consumerism, the high street, all of that franchise of trivia and pornography that makes up our reductive, stupid little mundane lives, shuffling around as plantation slaves to earn a little crust so we can buy a fucking iPhone and maybe get 2 weeks in Mallorca once a year or whatever. I mean, it's just reductive from where we're intended to be as limitless, ineffable, majestic, divine sons and daughters of God. No, we've been cauterized, we've been securitized, we've been monetized, we've been reduced and undignified into these little creatures that are supposed to live a life in service to the crown or the state and then shuffle off our mortal coil at a time that's designated for us, of a cancer, because a slow death is a profitable death to the parent corporation. So they like us to get sick, but not until they've squeezed enough lemonade out of us, up until the age of 65 or whatever it is. Then they want a slow death so they can bleed your pension dry. But I mean, that is how the Saturnian logic just plays out naturally in this very mutant and dystopian world that generationally we have allowed to emerge. And
that's starting with you said about circumcision. When Jesus said that the circumcision of the spirit is not the flesh, and he took a lot of heat for that, just making that statement. The male foreskin is for the stimulation of the clitoris. Absolutely. And then because it creates a little rib. And then the female clitoris, of course, if you remove that, you remove their ability to orgasm, unless they can have deep orgasm. So the orgasm is unstoppable in a human body, unstoppable, which is why these priests get so sick. When you put all males together in a male congregation, they become gay. Over 80% of the Catholic priesthood is admittedly gay. Well, you're supposed to be celibate according to your rules that you created. You're not supposed to be gay. No wonder you're gay, because it's unstoppable. It's like an earthquake. It's trying to vibrate you. So it's your first bliss. It's your root bliss. And then as each energy center in the body starts to vibrate, it reveals a higher bliss and a higher bliss. So I like to think of the human orgasm as you're trying to start your motorcycle, and you can't get it going yet. Once you've had enough loving orgasms, not, pornography, in my opinion, is ugly. We need a sexual education that is about loving orgasms, where the heart is connected to the root chakra, where the heart is.
Tomorrow I've got my beloved friend, Margot Anand, the great avatar of sexual ecstasy, the woman who wrote The Art of Sexual Ecstasy, one of the greatest books that shaped the way that we view sex and the human orgasm. Margot's coming and she'll be staying with me tomorrow, and the next day we're filming. Be great to connect you with her, David, so you can also have a chat. I think you met briefly already, correct? And
we did. I really love Margot. And it's so important to understand that if you, and this is what Osho would say, if you snip off the root, and again, Jesus was saying this, don't circumcise their bodies. The circumcision is the spirit, and the Jews of the time didn't understand him and reamed him for this. Because again, the rib on the male foreskin, my father didn't want any of us circumcised. And of course, we were baptized Catholics by the grandparents. But, I remember my baptism at 4 weeks old. I remember his sweaty lips and how disgusted I was in him. And I knew he was a pervert as a child. I knew it. And he baptized me. And as a 4-week-old, I said, "You're blind. You don't know God. You're just pretending you know God." And I knew he was a pervert. And it's not their fault, because when you put males together in the priesthood and they don't see the beauty of the female, their sexuality is emerging and you can't stop it. So the way we harmonize our sexuality is love, is when you connect the heart chakra to the root chakra, and the heart chakra to the voice chakra, and the heart chakra to
David,
the center.
The point I wanted to make a bit earlier, but didn't quite finish, was that the circumvention of the human orgasm has been integral to the Catholic Church, to the parent corporation, to the Babylonian masters, invisible masters, and that's because the human being who's in a state of bliss and ecstasy, orgasmic bliss, and is ideating patterns of perfection in that state of bliss. That is how we manifest a higher octave of expression. That's how we manifest and anchor heaven on earth and begin to actually manifest it through that orgasmic ideation. So human beings in other seedings have known that, and we've tapped into that nature. When you sodomize infants, you invert or rape them through these satanic rituals. You invert the kundalini. You steal that life force, that creative life force. Mm-hmm. And that is where the Babylonian priesthood, that, as I refer to, this dark invisible mastery, and these Sabbatean cultists, they've been doing that ritualistically, generationally, for civilizationally as well, because they understand the power of human orgasm, especially when it's inverted and stolen. That's the Promethean fire. We've got to that point now where we can see the catastrophic failure of the Catholic Church. The papacy is rank, it's derelict. We can see it clearly for what it is, this twisted, shuffling old, venal, vituperative old motherfuckers shuffling around in their little red booties. Good humans now can see that stuff. It's a beautiful thing. Good humans can see it. We smell it. It stinks. We don't want it any longer. Should we be marching on it and hang these creatures by the neck until dead, metaphorically speaking, or should we just absolve and redeem? I can't answer to that. I just know that it's time to withdraw our attention, our plasma, from all of the iconoclasticism of religiosity. All, absolutely. We must withdraw. David, we've been 2 hours into the broadcast. We're drawing this to an end. We've managed to keep almost 4,000 people on all the way through. I sense we're going to take this further and do another activation shortly, if you're up for that. But
I'm really up for sure, because I'm so 100% attuned in my visions I received. When I received my visions of Christ, I wrote a book called Face to Face with Jesus Christ, which got 5 stars on Amazon. My publisher, Paul Clemens of Blue Dolphin, stole the book from me. He made me give him $20,000 to publish the book, and he stole it ever since. So I'd never gotten anything out of it. But the messages in the full messages of Christ to me, I'd like to share sometime, with your group. And I absolutely agree that if you go to the female nunneries and you see what they did, they gave birth to children because they were raped, and they killed and buried the children. They found thousands of skeletons of little babies, and you can't imagine the guilt these women felt, because their desire to have an orgasm emerges, and they're told to be celibate. See, celibacy is like fasting, like where you fast on olive pieces, olive pulp, and bread. You just take a break from sex for a while. It's just called fasting. It was never meant to be permanent, and it was never permanent for the Jewish people either, ever. It was a break. It's just, you just take a little break to, rebuild your vital life force energies. And as you get older, of course, that if you're fulfilled, then as you get older, there's less and less desire. When the real bliss starts coming that sustains itself, it gets brighter than an orgasm. It gets higher. But again, if you cut off the root and you repress the root, and you're judging yourself, there's perversion. And that's why Pornhub got mobbed during the during the lockdowns, and that's not lovemaking, right? That's not lovemaking. It's distorting the young kids' minds. Give them a source of what lovemaking looks like. Enjoy touching first.
Well, we're going to be doing that tomorrow with Margot. I'm even thinking of maybe doing a live broadcast tomorrow on this very subject, David, because you're right. This is a reintegration of sex and sexuality that absolutely has to be dragged into the mainframe now.
So the first cutaway for her for tomorrow, because that's what we lost. Playboy was at least somewhere in the middle as a revolution in the 60s. Like, I was in the riots in the 60s in Berkeley. I was this 7-year-old running around. I saw the naked women dancing topless, and I thought it was really a lot of fun as a little kid. I remember when I saw my first, image of a naked woman. And to me, it's naturally the most beautiful thing in the world. It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be. If you see it in positivity and love and light, it's absolutely wonderful. And yes, people should fall in love and get into deep relationships. Make children. Some of us are made to make children. Some of us not. I got to say, the two missing elements in everything we know about successful meditation is the repression of sexuality, not learning how to have wonderful orgasms, which Margot's going to teach tomorrow, and the toning practice, that we are a musical instrument, like Pythagoras said. Those are the missing elements, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. Well, I'll let you know tomorrow, David, if you're around. It'd be lovely for you to look in on that. If Margot wants to do a live, I will do it tomorrow or the next day. But I think it'll be tomorrow, earlier than this time, because it's now nearly 2:30 in the morning. So I'm going to try and get some shut eye because I have an intense day tomorrow. But David, delightful activation. Really enjoyed this, and I want to thank Jennifer Larkin of New Earth Horizon Media, who is leading an amazing team right now, who are building out the censor-free platform that we have no option but to develop out. And we're hoping within a couple of weeks to have that fully up and running, so that we are no longer subjected to the wiles and the fancies of that little turd Zuckerberg, Twitter, Jack Dorsey, YouTube, and all these other cretins who by stealth positioned themselves quite malevolently in recent years to gain the trust of millions and millions of people around the world through their cute little social media platforms. That was a bear trap, a drag net, which I'm afraid hundreds of millions of us fell victim to. And now, of course, the minute we've accreted into movements of truth and disclosure and upliftment and affirmation and love, we're being deplatformed, censored by these satanic elements. So I plan to completely exodus from YouTube and all that crap shortly. And the platform we're actually building for you as well, David, and for all good truthers out there who are disclosing the real shit that people want to learn about, people want to hear about. So we'll definitely keep you abreast of all of that. So thank you, Jennifer, for your, she's in the green room. Thank you, Jennifer, for recommending that we do this gig today with David. I think that's beautiful. I'm not a religious man. I just happen to be madly in love with Yeshua, the master, and many of the mystical traditions in this beautiful world that we inhabit. And happy Easter to everyone out there for looking in. And there's still thousands of you there. I know that if there's 4,000 looking in on this one channel, it means we probably got 20, 30, 40,000 people out there watching through our syndicated networks. Love you all madly. Yes, get someone some green juice. Someone's saying, get Sacha some green juice. Yes, very good idea. Thank you for that. And David, let's hook in again within a couple of weeks and do another activation. If you're up for that, I'd love to just keep
whatever you want to do. I want to work with you, Sacha. The Lord is risen within you.
Quite second. God bless you, David, and thank you, everyone. Good night. Good night, everyone. Thank you.